Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
What's up, Mike?
How are we doing today, Phil? Fired up. It's Fired Up Friday, so let's hit it.
All right, well, let's get right into it, Mike. I've got a lot to say. You know, the Iranian thing went down, and it's got me thinking about a lot of things. Like, what if the next major attack on American soil isn't launched from abroad, but quietly triggered from within our own neighborhoods? You know, after we bombing the Iranians? So this week on Random Waypoints, Mike and I are going to explore the chilling possibility that Iranian sleeper cells, hidden, trained, and patient, could be lying in wait for the perfect political cover, a ceasefire, which is where we're at right now. And it's a theory that's gaining traction in intelligence circles. What if peace talks are actually buying time for something far more dangerous? What if these operatives already have U.S. citizenship, access to infrastructure, and are indistinguishable from our average citizens? And just as importantly, who gets targeted when fears are unchecked, from Middle Eastern communities to anyone who looks suspicious? How do we separate the real threats from racial profiling? This ain't no movie script. This is a real national conversation, and it's one we need to have. So let's get into it, Mike. Mike, what's your take on the idea that Iran might use a ceasefire to reposition itself or activate a sleeper cell? Is that plausible or political hype?
Phil, I am not a conspiracy theorist at all, but I'm going to tell you what. That is absolutely 1,000% plausible, for sure. I mean, Iran has been a wild card from the beginning. They're not to be trusted. And if you think for a second, anybody listening out there, that they don't have people embedded in the United States, you are smoking some interesting crack, because they probably are. So having said that, do I think it's going to happen? I don't know.
Well, but you do see that you do consider it plausible, and it's something we should look out for. It's not just hype.
The future of warfare is, in my opinion, 100% internal, meaning that your attack is going to come from look, you just watched Israel basically defeat. I'll call it defeat, but that might be a strong word. But like, they basically defeated Iran by doing attacks internally. Most of their successes were through drone strikes launched from inside Iran. Most of their assassinations of the top military and political guys were done from inside Iran. And I think that Iran could do the same here in the United States or in England or anywhere else? Absolutely. And I think that's the future of war. I think going forward, we can spend billions and billions and billions and trillions of dollars on aircrafts and all this military infrastructure we talked about for the last fucking 2 weeks. All we've talked about, everybody on the internet has become an expert in a bunker buster bomb at this point. Everybody in the world thinks they know what the hell they do, right? Lots of money spent on that stuff, but I don't think that's where the future is. I don't think that's where the future is at all. I think that in reality, you could probably spend $1,000 on a drone and fly it down the tunnel into one of these things and blow something up or do something like that. And I think that that's more likely in the future. I'm not saying we're all the way there yet, but do I think Iran is in the United States? Yeah, for sure. Not only could it be government people, but it could be sympathizers, right? Because
absolutely,
this is the other problem you're dealing with. You're dealing with sympathy and sympathizers and people that have hatred, the people that hate Jews or people that hate Arabs or people that hate Americans.
Absolutely. But let's stick to sleeper cells for right now.
Okay.
So, do you think it's going to happen? If you had to wager your life savings on whether or not this is going to happen. Is it going to happen? Do we need to really consider it? Do we need to start rounding up Iranians?
Well, so here's the problem. It's like,
And
I mean, how
I'm
do you?
sorry, Mike. Just quickly, I just want to say this briefly as a disclaimer. This episode is going to discuss potential national security threats and their social impacts. The goal is to inform and to explore, not to promote suspicion or discrimination against any community. Go for it, Mike.
Well, having said that, I mean, I don't, rounding up Iranians is virtually impossible, right? Because at this point in our, nobody knows what an Iranian is, and how do you define that for one? So I'm, let's just say, sympathizers of or native Iranians or anybody that whatever, or is on the take or being bought or paid for by the government. By the way, those could be Americans for that matter. Um, I, I don't, okay, I'm not going to give you a good answer, Phil. Yes, I believe that something could happen and may very well happen, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to come from the top. Meaning that I also think we're living in a world that's not as organized as one might think. So, do I think that the Ayatollah of Iran is going to order somebody and it's going to go through the military quote chain of command and come down to somebody that's stationed here, similarly to maybe the way that it was done in 9/11, where Osama bin Laden, there was an infrastructure in place. I don't think that that's the case anymore. But do I think that there's insinuations? Oh shit, Donald Trump's on the news saying, maybe we could have a regime change. If that's what the people want. These are all innuendos, right? Like this is. We're not making it happen, but we're sure as hell suggesting ideas. So, do I think that Iran could suggest, hey, somebody out there, maybe, yeah.
Well, if I were to guess,
I don't think you should be worried about it.
I think we should.
Well, and the reason I say don't worry about it, I don't mean you shouldn't be worried about it, but what I mean is there's a lot of things to worry about. That is one of the things to worry about. I don't know that it's the number one thing that's going to take you out, Phil, on your way home from the grocery store.
I agree with that. That's what I was going to say. I don't think we need to worry about. Well, we should worry about everything, like you said, but I'm not thinking that there's going to be a stadium bombed or something like that. I take like
but they would love that if they could do it.
Oh yes, but I think I'm not thinking like that. I'm not thinking 9/11. I'm thinking historically. I like to make my decisions based off past history, and past history similarly would be the Soviets during the Cold War. They had something called an illegals program, where they got all of these people, Soviets living here in America, became naturalized citizens. Some of them even, they lived out their life, and then the second generation living here carried out whatever. And they never at any point did any bombing or anything like that, but they did things that in the big scheme of things were far more detrimental to our society overall than just killing a few people. And I'm not dismissing killing people as something small, but and so that's what I see, because I have in my family, not, and when I shouldn't say family, he's my friend, and his name is Mike, that I grew up with. He actually met his wife around the same time as I did, and his wife is Iranian. And the way she got here in her citizenship is, I still to this day don't know exactly what she does, but it's a high profile security clearance thing, and she's got special skills. And there are a lot of people that fit that are here in Iran. I'm from Iran, and other countries too. So my fear is not something getting blown up. My fear is someone being in a logistics department of something important to us. Somebody who's in government. We spoke about that last week about that. them being in government and just making small little changes to a bill or a law. And it can be so many little incremental, small little things where they chip away at you, just like, a beaver chips away at a big tree, and next thing you know, the tree is falling down. So I'm more fearful of that than the big thing. Also, when you look at it historically, I look at sleeper cell. If I were to try and figure out what I think of as like the furthest thing that I can think of in my mind historically that would be like the first sleeper cell or the first one that I know of, I would say it's the Trojan horse. If you ever read the book, The Iliad, Trojan horse, even if you haven't read it, most people know the Trojan horse story, right?
Yep.
And even though that story is a myth, the strategy behind it, the thoughts behind it have been used through military history up until this date. When we even look at the B-2 bombing that just happened, once you hear the story of how they did it, it was a Trojan horse. They sent B-2s in the opposite direction while they were flying in, and everybody was looking at these other B-2s, and they didn't even see them slipping in and bombing them.
That's
So
right.
this whole idea of deception and long-term deception has a long history. So to think of it as a conspiracy theory, to think of it as something that you should be aware of, but secondarily, I think is fool's gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is what we've talked about here on the podcast a lot too, Phil. What you're talking about is infiltrating through control of society slowly. I mean, we were talking about this last week, I think maybe last week when we were talking about Ilhan Omar or whatever her name is. And, we were talking about politicians getting into positions of power that might not have the society and the American dream as an ideal, right? Although they're going to do a good job of pretending it to get to where they need to be. And we're going to talk about this. I got a lot to say about this. This is another topic I want to talk about on the podcast today. But
Well, come on with it, bro.
Well, I'm trying not to bounce around. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You said you didn't have no more to say about it, because I.
Oh no, I mean, this is a concern.
So, Mike, I have a unique question about the Middle East that I already have my own expert on the show. I don't even have to go seek out somebody. What do you think Americans get wrong about the Middle East or about how terrorist networks actually operate? Now, I know you don't know much about terrorist operations, but you do know about the Middle East. What are we getting wrong about the Middle East?
Well, I think the number one thing that Americans get wrong with it is what we do not understand that this is not something new, right? This has been going on for really thousands of years.
Yes.
and on top of that, I think Americans have bucketed this into that there are two parties involved. Largely it's the the Muslims and they're just basically it's two religions. There's Jews and Muslims, and it's Arab versus Israelis, and that is not the case. If you look at most of Iran is a great example of this. Iran, although it's existed for a long time, used to be Persia, whatever. It's been around for many, 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 many years, over 100 years, the way it's been, basically on the same borders. It's composed of to sum it up, there's maybe 6 to 8 major ethnic backgrounds in Iran. There's more than that, but there's there's the Kurds, and there's Sunnis, and there's Shias. There are some very diverse clans, let's call them. And and this argument that there's it's more than two sides, and it's a very complicated situation. The other thing you got to realize about the Middle East is that we set the boundaries. They're artificial boundary lines, right? The Americans, the British, we were involved in making these countries largely after World War II. So I mean, the problem with this is that trying to control what they are and bucking them in, and then you've got this whole thing on top of it where you got, is there a Palestinian state? I mean, that's a loaded question because I'm going to segue. You're leading me into this. I wanted to talk about this guy in New York City, but I mean, your segue. This is the second segue you've given me an opportunity to talk about this guy because this is there's a lot in play going on here. You have to understand that the number one place in the world outside of Israel for the Jewish population is America.
Absolutely.
In fact, New York City is the number two Jewish populated place in the world. So oftentimes I think Americans don't really understand what our connection is to the Middle East through the Israeli state. And then on the other side of this, and Phil, you've brought this up a million times, obviously our other connection is financial. It's oil based and wealth based. So, right. So there's a lot of connections on the part of America. So when I love it when I'm looking at my social media in the last week, and typical idiots on social media, by the way, for those of you out there who might listen to me that I defriended this week, don't be surprised because I defriend people. I swear to God, I defend people even I agree with because they're just spewing bunch of shit on social media all the time. It's always along their pre-existing line of thinking, regardless of what. So, the fact that Trump sent the bombing in there means it was bad if you hate Trump. That's not based in reality whatsoever. I'm wandering. I know I'm all over the place. I told you I was going to get fired up. But my point to this whole thing is, I don't even know what my point to the whole thing was. What was I talking about?
I thought you were going to talk about the mayoral race in New York.
I am. I'm getting there.
Okay.
But, yeah. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. There's this guy called, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but his name is Zohran Mamdani. Okay.
You got it right. That was perfect.
Was it right?
Okay. Zohran Mamdani.
Now, here's a guy, and here I'm going to poke the bear on Phil here for a second. This guy was born in Kenya or somewhere, right? He wasn't born in America. I know how you love that when it comes to politicians. He's 33 years old. He was like a failed, I'll just call him a failed rap star. I think he wanted to be a rapper at one point. And he represents a lot of things that I think are disasters, but what I'm talking about right now, forget about the fact that he's not from America originally. Forget about the fact that he was a failed rapper. He's an interesting character. He's very well spoken, by the way. He should be very well spoken. To me, he's a snake oil salesman. Okay, that's what he is. He's selling a bunch of. If you look at his party platform that he represents, it's un-American, okay? He represents some nonsensical shit. He wants to get rid of police. He wants to send in social workers if there's some kind of conflict. He wants free busing. He wants rent controlled, the entire city to be rent controlled. He wants, what else does he want? I mean, I could go on and on. He's a self-proclaimed socialist. He could drive New York City back to the 70s. I mean, he's got some crazy ideas. Now, in fairness, he's running, or he was yesterday anyways, running against Cuomo, who who's fallen from grace as it was, right? So I mean, here we go. And he won, which, by the way, in New York City doesn't mean shit. So he won the primary last night, but that doesn't mean they all could still run. and they may. And in fact, I'll bet you my life on that Cuomo is going to run anyways. So this guy is, but he's most famous, and I'll go with the segue, is that he said on several interviews I've heard him say that if what's his name, the leader of Israel came over, that he would have him arrested. Netanyahu, yeah. So he is, and he is very clear that he would go against federal law, because he was even asked, well, the United States doesn't recognize that treaty that says that he was a war criminal, but he's like, well, I would go against federal law on that. And so this, to me, this is your sleeper cell, okay, Phil? Here's your sleeper cell.
Well, everything you just described, I have no problem with him saying or doing anything that you just said. It's simply him being foreign born and saying and doing those things for me. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well,
you can have like, let's say America's for Israel. A citizen can be for Palestine, but it's different when you have sentiments toward Palestine. And that's the issue with him. He's first of all, he's from Africa, and here's the killer to me, and it hasn't been mentioned at all. His father is Mahmoud Mamdani. He's a prominent post-colonial scholar and a critic of Western foreign policy.
Exactly.
Well, this goes back
Muslim too.
Yeah, and I don't have no problem with that.
I don't either. But it's a very slippery slope when you're talking about the number one city in the world with a Jewish population, and he outwardly says that he's not for a Jewish state. And
I think I think it's totally different if American said that.
Exactly.
It still might not be good, but it's totally different.
That's my point. Yes, correct. Yeah. So, this is an interesting situation there, because, like I said, I listened to him. He's very well spoken. He reminds me of, and obviously his political leanings are in line with, say, Bernie Sanders, in many ways.
I think he's more left than Bernie Sanders.
Oh, he's more left than Bernie Sanders, for sure.
I don't even think you should call it left. It needs to be some kind of radical name for when you get that far left.
Well, okay, but let's talk about this for a second, because one of the things that is being pointed out by the mainstream media about this is that I was listening to MSNBC, and then I was on CBS, and actually The View was talking about this too.
Oh my God!
Obviously, all left-wing nut job shows, but the question is this the future face of the Democratic Party? Are they going to swing?
Are you talking about Mamdani?
Yes.
What do you mean? Because he couldn't run for president.
No, but his views and in other words, is the Democratic Party going to go and back progressives? Because he's in line. Look who supported him. AOC, Ilhan Omar, he's in that group of what I would be considered to be, they're kind of all anti-American.
Not only are they anti-American, like if somebody were to say, well, that's your opinion, it is my opinion, but it's based off the facts that they have said lots of anti-American things out of their mouths.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean, usually politicians, when they say something disturbing, they figure out a way to say it in a political way. But the statements they make are overt. There's no way for you to say, I misconstrued their words, I misinterpreted. Very clear. Very clear.
And it's interesting because you've got so New York is a I don't know that New York is representative of the United States. Okay, let's be clear. We've got a mayor here, Eric Adams, who's going to, by the way, he's also going to run, who's a Democrat, but he's running as an independent. Then you've got Cuomo, who was disgraced and has come back. Then you've got this guy, and you've got a couple other guys too. What was the one guy? He was Rescue Cats or something. I was watching this whole thing. I'm like, talk about a microcosm or a mini version of the United States. I mean, picture this: you had Trump running against Biden, which was like two clowns, and then Biden was replaced by the other clown. So now New York City wants to do its best to look like a clown show too, and put. I mean, are these the best people that you can put up to run for the, to be a mayor of basically one of the largest cities in the world? It's crazy. These are the best guys.
Well, the Democrats have shown that they will look at the map and make a decision and decide who's going to be in whatever position it is, a la Kamala Harris, a la Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. They will literally put their finger on the scale and decide things like this. With that said, I'm wondering why they did not put the finger on the scales for Zohran Mamdani. And the reason I'm asking that is, you see there's xenophobia going on in the country. You see there's an issue with Jews, Muslims, Palestine, and Israel, and blah, blah, blah. You see that we just voted in a president that is against immigration and immigrants. You are trying to win the next election. You are trying to win back some of the people who have said, this is why I left the party. Why would you back this dude this year? Maybe down the road, but why this year when you're about to go into the midterm elections, when you're hoping to try and, gain a few seats, get a few positions here and there? I feel like this is a hindrance to their cause, because everybody's been asking since the election, what are the Democrats going to do? What are they going to do different? How are they going to change their message? And this is reinforcing to me them backing him is saying, we ain't going to do nothing different.
Exactly. It's my point. To me, they're signing on to a nothing burger again. They're making the mistake. They're doing the 80-20 rule reverse again. They're signing
Mike,
on to the
I just want to be clear again. We're just looking from the outside looking in. I don't know this dude. Because there are things my father believes, and I believe the exact opposite. There are things that the country says and has as a belief that I don't have. So he might be the greatest guy in the world, but the optics of it right now is all wrong.
Well, particularly when you got such anti-Semitic shit going on in the United States right now. Mm-hmm. This is almost like a kick in the nuts.
And you kind of mentioned it, and you moved on, but I mean, New York City, Manhattan is basically. Oh no, that would sound like a slur.
Oh, we're good with that though.
Well, you will figure it out by my correction.
Oh, shit.
New York City is the town of the Jewish community. That's their borough. Yes. I was going to say J-Town, and I was like, no, I can't say that shit. But I didn't mean it in no kind of bad way.
No, I get it.
But I meant like that's they town.
Sure, absolutely.
So this is going to cause issues. They are going to be disruptive toward. Let's say he became mayor. They are going to be disruptive toward him throughout the time he is mayor. Period. They're going to do just like the Democrats and Republicans. If he says left, they're going to say right. If he says go, they're going to say stop. So I just don't see anything coming of it positive.
No. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And more scary though is his views on, just I mean, he's obsessed. If you look at deep into what he's talked about, he's obsessed with getting rid of police
That's
and
crazy.
oh yeah, no, I mean, he thinks that all sorts of the money is spent on this stuff. He's look, when you go too far socialist, and this is Mike's opinion right now, but I think you become too far of an idealist. And I think we can all agree that in many ways, if socialism worked and idealism worked, we'd all sign on to the program, right? It sounds great. If it had actually worked, it would be amazing. However, it doesn't. And his view of the world is everybody can be reformed. We can effectively send psychologists in or whatever they wants to set social workers in instead of police to I don't know, reduce. I think he said reduce the temperature of the conflict. It's like, okay, you got two guys standing there with guns and a socialist worker comes in between them. That ain't gonna work. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you. So
Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I mean, just I think he's an idealist, and I think yeah, sure, everybody wants to ride the bus for free. Sounds fucking great. Where the hell's the money coming from, right? And now you're going to impose on the owners of New York City, the landlords and the building owners. You're going to tell them everybody has to have rent control, and it's unaffordable to live in the city. Well, obviously, it's not unaffordable to live in the city. There's plenty of people living in the city. So, he's another one of those. He's very clearly anti wealth.
Mike, could you look up something real quickly for me? I know your computer's right. How
Okay.
how long has Zohran Mamdani been in America? Because he's
Since he was
34 years old.
since he came young. He was 7 or 8 years old, I believe.
Okay, so yeah, he had his foundation was already set to a certain extent. All of the child psychologists and things that I've
Mm-hmm.
ever read, a lot of the infrastructure of your mind is built in them first 5 years. So I'm just fearful of. I mean, he grew up with a very radical dad. It,
Well, he's talked about globalizing the intifada. He's talked about being, he's said plenty of anti-Semitic things. Uh, um, I'm reading it right now. He's run on progressive positions, including freezing rents, offering free public transit, launching city-run grocery stores. He wants to tax the wealthiest 2% of the. Which, by the way,
so he's a
I find it
socialist.
funny. Yeah, he wants to tax the wealthiest 2% of New Yorkers, which, by the way, pay the highest tax of anybody in the United States. I think they're at 56% or something like that. Um, you know, and I find it funny who the people that have endorsed him
Yeah,
are
who's endorsing him?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, because she's another radical. Um, However, you can look at New York. So this is how you know he's kind of fringe. Governor Hochul and Kristen Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer have not backed him. And these guys are, those are old. Oh, I'm going to call them old school Democrats. He's 33 years old, so he's kind of a young whippersnapper, let's just say, and so he falls in with those.
I want to make a brief note about the Democrats. Sometimes things that I say on this podcast, Mike, is because of backlash or things that are said specifically to me, not to the podcast, specifically to me,
Yep.
because I'm supposed to be upholding. You get it. Uh, what I forgot what you just said, Mike.
I'm telling you. Oh, I was just saying who was backing him and who was not. I was talking about old school Democrats not backing him, and
Oh yeah, about the old school Democrats. Because I often have people who they're like, why are you so down on the Democrats? They're the only people who protect you or look out for you. And they're talking about me. They ain't talking about you,
Right.
mate.
Yeah, I got you.
And this is an example. Those older dudes, come on, Mike. They ain't comfortable with a young Muslim guy. And
No,
that's it. That's it. They don't have
no.
nothing else to do with it because they have backed far worse candidates. So
Sure.
it's not his policies or something.
Yeah,
It's they ain't.
look at New York. We had Anthony
So
Weiner.
look, the point that I'm making is people like to try and make it a racist thing. Like if you are a minority living in America, there's no other choice. You have to be a Democrat because
Mhm.
the Republicans are racist. Now, I'm not about to say they're not, but so are the Democrats.
For sure.
They they just nice about the shit.
Yep.
Um, so
Exactly.
I just wanted to get that off my chest. I didn't want
Right.
that to slip by.
Yep.
They didn't just say, we don't want to.
And for the record, we're not sitting here bashing Democrats. We do a fair amount of bashing Democrats on this
I am,
podcast.
bro. I have the right to.
Well, but hold on.
I was a Democrat all my life. Anything, all the check marks. I got Democratic political figures in my family. I got family that's Democrats and in the ministry, and they speak on TV. I got the right. I voted for twice Barack Obama. So I check off all the boxes. I can say whatever I want.
Well,
You
but what
can't.
I'm saying is one of the main reasons I think we spend so much time criticizing them is because within the
They're
last 5 years
hypocrites.
they made so many bad choices that if you particularly, and I know I've said this a million times, I'm going to say it again. I'm not a fan of Trump, and I'm not a fan of this MAGA movement that's basically hijacked the Republican Party. But if you're going to have any hope of a future of the ability to move forward to come together at some point, you've got to salvage your, because to me the Democratic Party is more screwed up than the Republican Party is. And the reason they lose is because they're losers. That's why they keep
What
losing. Losers lose.
One thing that is holding them back is it's where they get their money from. They
Yeah,
all get their money from corporations,
sure.
but they have specifically chosen a bunch of companies where half of them the CEO is LGBTQ.
Yep.
So they're not going to give no money unless there's
Did you
something
see an
for
interview
them.
with speaking of that, did you see Bernie Sanders on Joe Rogan? And Joe Rogan brought up to him, or no, Bernie Sanders brought up to Joe Rogan about Elon Musk, whatever $250 million or something he supported Trump, and Joe Rogan bring up a good point. He goes, well, what about the 1.5 billion or whatever that was given to why can't I remember her name? Kamala Harris, and like you said, Phil, the problem is money on both sides, and who's backing them, and these are not normal people. So I get
Because if they give their money, you can't have an opinion after that.
I'm going to defend this Zohran Mamdani for a second because he's outside of that box, right? Because this is part of
Oh
what the
no.
progressives are. Well, this is what the progressives are about. They are about younger generation. He's a young guy. AOC's young. They're about trying to do it through social media, through grassroots, through popular uprising, through progressive movement. They're trying to do it without that old school money that we're talking about here.
Mhm.
So in that view, I like it, but but I'm never going to back some guy that wants to, I mean, he's just, yeah, to me, that's not, I mean, his views are not un-American.
Well, like I said, I don't have my issue is when you are foreign born and you've been given the privilege of being a citizen here, you need to show some respect. And
You got to
I
realize,
think
remember, he's already
I
in office.
right.
He's
And I
already
just, well, you will know how I feel like that. You should not be able to hold any political office, any from I'm all the way down to a court reporter. Nothing to do with the three law enforcement, the legislative, none of them. None of it. You can't be a judge. You can't be a police officer. Nothing that you have some kind of power in America.
Yep. I understand that.
And listen, I love this melting pot we in. I love when I lived in New York that I would go to a Jamaican place and it would have a little bit of another culture's food in there because it's such a melting pot. I love talking to people and visiting other countries and all of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, I can't go to their countries and do nothing.
Right.
And it makes sense, and I ain't mad about it. So why do we let immigrants come here and guilt trip us about what they know they couldn't do anywhere else?
I agree.
Because Americans do a lot of stuff guilt trip. Barack Obama was a guilt trip. Everybody didn't really think he was the greatest person or whatever, but they was like, you know what? It looks like people are starting to join together. I'm going to go ahead and vote for him anyway. I want to be on the right side of this.
Which, by the way, though, there's a lot to be said about that, Phil, because that's kind of what I was just talking about earlier, where you need to get one of the parties needs to get a candidate that can pull people together, that has charisma, and that's what Obama had. Obama was incredibly well spoken. He created excitement. You wanted to like the guy, like, you know what I mean? Like he was up there, and he had power, and that is something that we lack right now.
It's only going to get worse. It never gets better.
Unfortunately, I tend to agree with you.
Well, Mike, I guess I should mention this weekend I'm going to Overland Expo Pacific Northwest. And I also want to mention to anybody who's listening, I'm going to spend a majority of my time in camp, more than I've ever spent. I am going to be giving out several prizes, and I'm going to be picking a rig of camp. And I just wanted to ask you, Mike, what should I be looking for a rig of camp? I'm probably not going to listen to you, but
yeah. So, okay, fair enough. This is gonna be my first Pacific Northwest.
Wait, before you answer, Mike, the reason why I'm asking you this is, I've had a lot of communications with people, and they've looked back at my social media at the vehicles I've picked and stuff like that, and some people are like, they ain't like my choice, and I'm like, yep. It's my choice. I'm not saying it's what I'm picking is rig of camp. So now I'm trying to go external and talk to someone of your ilk that can tell me, what should I be looking for? What makes a great rig?
All right, here we go. First off, this is going to be the first Overland Expo Pacific Northwest that I am not attending. I apologize to everybody out there, but I am full on working on my container build down here in Mexico. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be at Expo. I'm going to miss you guys and seeing everybody for sure, and miss hanging with Phil, miss the happy hours, miss all the stuff that we always have a good time doing. What I want you to look for, Phil, for me in the rig is, and this is near and dear to me. Like I want you to pick a rig that is picked because these people clearly use it and enjoy what the rig brings to them. Meaning, like, it's not about the rig. It's about what kind of adventures and what kind of places and what kind of people they meet because of that vehicle. So I want you to find a vehicle there that you can see by looking at the vehicle that these guys really enjoy what they do, whether it's they're on the road full time or they're weekend warriors. That doesn't matter, but they actually get out and use this truck to go and it's not about what's strapped on the side of it or it wasn't in it. There's lots of pretty trucks there, and there's lots of things that you can be like, this was an eternal. I call them eternal builds. They've been working on this thing for 20 years, and what I mean, and it's beautiful, and that's great. But I want you to pick something where the people have been using that thing. That's what I like to see.
One thing on that note is, one thing that I've always been doing is when I look in the car, I always look at their odometer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have seen like some vintage vehicles that I'm just drooling over, and he's got like 40,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
And he's not the first owner. Yep. So the person who did the 35,000 of those miles was the first owner.
Right.
What else should I be looking for,
so
Mike?
That's what I want to see. I mean, and I almost think that it should be judged on the vehicle and the people. The vehicle and the owner that's involved in it. What's the story? I want to know the story behind it.
Go deeper on that one, bro.
Well, like, what's their background? Why are they in the world of overlanding? Why are they at Overland Expo? Where's their favorite places they like to travel to? Who do they travel with? What kind of terrain do they like to see? What do they eat on the road? You know what I mean? I want to know, I want to know my whole feeling behind, because that matters to me. Let me give you the correlation. What I want to know is, let's just say, like, hypothetically, let's say it's a Jeep. Why did they pick that Jeep? Why did they pick a Jeep and not a Toyota 4Runner? Or why didn't they pick, whatever, a Mitsubishi Fuso, or, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what I like to see is people that are actually out there doing it, why they're doing it, what they're doing, and why are they driving what they're driving? Because I don't want to repeat ourselves, but you and I have talked about this many times on the podcast. We've had many guests on here that have all sorts of ranges of different vehicles and rigs and methods of travel. Shit, I mean, some of them aren't even in vehicles; they're on motorcycles or bicycles or whatever. But they all have stories behind them, and I think that's what we want to hear about when we talk about this rig that you pick out.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take all those things into consideration, Mike. I kind of sort of do those things because, one thing about when you walk around and you walk up to somebody's rig, and I'm hoping people are paying attention to this part. When you walk around camp, at first, the first time you ever do it, you'll see a vehicle and the guy will be standing right there, and you want to ask him something and you feel like, oh no, I don't want to intrude, right? But the atmosphere is the complete opposite at Overland Expo.
Mm-hmm.
If you go over and say hi, the guy's going to tell you way more about his vehicle than you ever wanted to know.
Yep.
He's going to give you anecdotal stories about breakdowns and upgrades. I just happen to love all that stuff, so I listen intently. Right. But my point is, don't be scared to walk up and talk to people. People have come to the event to show off their ride, and they can't show it off if you don't come up to them. Right. And you will learn so much. I have gotten so many tips over the years doing these rigs of camp. So don't just watch me and which vehicle I picked. If you happen to be at this event or any event like it, go walk camp.
Yeah, agreed.
How is your build going, Mike? Your home build.
Well,
Your container? What do you officially want to call it? Your container build, your home build? What's the
I call it I would call it a tiny house,
tiny
shipping
house?
container build.
I like
It's
that.
going good. It's going good. It's there's been struggles involved. I've been a little behind on my YouTube series. I got the first 3 episodes out. There's going to be another one coming next week, but it's getting there. It's no different than building any one of my trucks. It just doesn't have any wheels on it.
Is there anything that you've learned up until this point that you're like, okay, if now I know this, if I could rewind and start over, this is something definitely I would not do again, or I would definitely do again?
Well, I don't know if I can put it in those terms, but what I will tell you is doing it in a foreign country with different sets of tools, different sets of parameters about products that you can buy, and language and measurement variations, meaning that they're in metric and we're in American English, whatever you call our system that doesn't make any sense. Boy, I'll tell you what, going to a hardware store to get parts here is a whole different world.
Oh,
And oh boy, because now you're navigating in a foreign language, in a foreign with a foreign currency, with a foreign way of counting things, and they don't do anything the same. So nothing is built the same way down here. And that's been a challenge for sure. I'm not gonna lie.
how's your Spanish going, Mike?
My Spanish is going pretty well.
How often are you speaking English when you're not on the podcast?
Well, I mean, obviously, I have friends down here that I'm with, so I'm speaking English daily with people that are from the States and in Canada. But I'm also speaking Spanish daily as well, because it just every day is interaction, whether it's at the hardware store, at the laundry, at the restaurant, wherever. So we speak Spanish every day too.
Okay. When are you coming back across the border, Mike?
To be determined. I do not know. I don't know yet. People ask me. I've been Mike, when are you coming home?
I asked you because I keep telling you, Mike. People ask me stuff to ask you.
I know there was a lot of people surprised that I wasn't going to be in the Pacific Northwest, and I think about it. A year ago, basically a year ago today, I was up in Oregon. And we had a great time last year. I mean, I remember it was hot as hell. It's kind of weird that right now you're what? I don't know, 2,500, 3,000 miles north of me, and it was hotter up there. Like it's 75 degrees out down here right now. It's beautiful. It was so hot last year in Oregon, and then I got my hand crushed. My arm was crushed at the end of Expo, and I was stuck in Redmond, Oregon for a month, and it was like 105 degrees every day. Holy shit. That was a year ago now. Crazy.
Saturday evening is supposed to be hot at the Expo.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time it's like in the 70s.
Oh, that'll be nice. That'll be nice. Mm-hmm. I just remember coming through Boise, Idaho last year. It was 105 degrees. I was like, wow, where am I? Whew.
Mike, where do you think Overland Expo is going in the next year? Let me be specific. I don't mean like are they going to do better or do worse. I mean like they opened a new event in California. Do you think they're going to do some other events this coming year? Because I've heard rumblings of that. Nothing definite.
Hard to say. I mean, I don't know if you look at I'm a numbers guy. Not that numbers tell the whole story, but I don't know that we actually talked about this on the podcast, but the Overland Expo West, the Flagstaff that you and I were both at, the numbers were off. Not a lot, but they were down. Let's put it this way: they've been down year over year for the last 2 years, not by big numbers. I want to. Don't quote me on this, but like I want to say they were at 31,000 at a high 2 years ago. And last year it was down just ever so slightly in 30,000 something. And this year it was 29 something thousand. So they're going down. Now, in fairness, maybe California drew some people away from that.
Yeah, I heard the numbers were astronomical for that.
Yes, California, the numbers were great. I did hear that. In fact, I think California had 18,000 through, which would have put it at the second biggest event, bigger than East, Pacific Northwest, and Mountain West. So I don't know. I don't know.
Have you heard anything about East moving? Because I've heard rumblings about that.
I heard a little bit about that. I don't know. I think there's still. I don't know if this is the last year. I know it's in Virginia this fall. I don't know if that's their last year on the contract or not. That may be why you're hearing rumblings. I don't know.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing is they won't even be in Virginia. There will still be an East, but it won't even be in that state. Have you heard that?
I did hear that. Yeah.
Where would they go?
I heard that they wanted to bring it back towards North Carolina again, but I don't know what. You'd have to find a venue. To me, if it was going to be North Carolina, I think you'd have to go into sort of probably the Raleigh-Durham area. Asheville, they tried to. There's no venues there. They tried all those different sites. Nothing was big enough.
If they go back to North Carolina, in my opinion, they're only interested in what that attendance number is, not who's attending.
Yeah.
Because I could see them going to North Carolina and the numbers jumping up. And I mentioned this to you years ago. If you have not noticed, most of the people who do international travel, most of the people who are full-timers, most of the people who just travel in America, the real overlanders, the real nomads, most of them choose the East to be the one that they don't go to. And it's not because of location. Well, yeah, it is location, but not in the sense of they don't like where it is. No. It's they don't like the politics and the atmosphere of those states.
Correct.
So if there is a move and it's to North Carolina, that's the message they're sending to me. If they choose North Carolina. Because from my understanding, some of the reason they left North Carolina is for some of the things that I'm insinuating.
I agreed. Yeah. I don't know. If I look at the East, where would I put it? Let's assume for a second you're going to keep it around the same time. To me, you'd have to consider the Northeast, which I would consider to be like the major New York metropolitan area somewhere, either in New York State or
upstate New York.
Somewhere up there. You got to have it accessible for people to be able to get in and out. Like, so, major airports, things like that. Population. I mean, one of the advantages of the East, obviously, is way more people. Now, admittedly, there's way less people in the East that are outdoorsy. I know I'm going to get attacked from people out here. Hey, and I'm from the East. But let me tell you, there's way more people in shape out West. And there's just way more people that do outdoor activities in the West.
What are you talking about, Mike? I'm from the Catskills, and we didn't even have an outhouse.
But I don't know. I mean, that's let's forget for a second that it has to be in a place where you and I would enjoy it, meaning that we can go and camp in proximity, because you certainly couldn't have done that in Orange County where the new expo was in California. So that's out the window. So I guess based on that, I mean, shit, I suppose you could have it in Orlando or something.
Oh God. And I hate to say it, Mike, I think it would do numbers.
Of course
I
it would,
think it would
because
do numbers.
of course it would.
But I would not go.
No, no, yeah, no, I don't, yeah, but
So so what state, if it was totally on you, Mike, what state?
yeah, out east.
Hmm.
That's a tough one. Um,
Me, it would be upstate New York would be number one. And I'm still not even being totally selfish. I'm considering of other people with that choice. Because my number one choice would be Vermont.
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think my choice would be Vermont too. But in the interest of getting people in and out and proximity to stuff and all that, I think to be honest with you, I think I would move it to Northern Virginia, in the DC metropolitan area, or up there, because now you're closer to the New York City, you're closer to Philadelphia, you're closer to major metropolitan areas. The problem with Arrington, Virginia, is it's out in the east, bump screw. It's near nothing.
It's like after you've passed everything you want to be around.
Yeah, exactly. So I could see like Northern Virginia or Pennsylvania is another state that certainly has. Pennsylvania has big fairgrounds. Look, you need the facility, right? So I could think of like where in near shit, what's the big fairgrounds there in Pennsylvania? I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of them, and their proximity to major metropolitan areas is close. And quite frankly, there's some camping and some other stuff out there. So I could see Pennsylvania being an option. I agree with
you're talking about like the west side of Pennsylvania,
well,
right?
central. I would say more central.
Okay, not around Philly.
Not around Philly. No,
okay.
that'd be eastern. I would say more Harrisburg, or more central Pennsylvania. Not so far west that you're like in Ohio near the Great Lakes. Not that far.
I could see that. A lot of people are not aware when they think of Philadelphia. They think of. I'm sorry. When they think of
Pennsylvania.
when they Pennsylvania, they think of Philly,
Yeah.
and like 80% of that state is like I'm trying to think of the name of that waterway. But anyway, there's a lot of forest and
Yeah, tons. Yeah, I can see that being a little bit more convenient to bigger population. Um, and I mean, while we're not talking politically correct, there's more money, right? I think the disadvantage of moving it south, less money. And I think that was one of the problems with North Carolina, with Southern Virginia, over there. You end up with there's less disposable income, there's less money, and you got more of a off-road crowd, a four-wheeling crowd, and I think that they want to direct this more towards a buying crowd, meaning people that have money, that want to spend money on vendors, because that's where their bread and butter is. That's where you're going to make money. And people, you got to remember, they also make money on day passes. So you got to be close enough to major areas where that's the problem with Virginia right now. There's not a lot in the way of day pass shit, because you're out, you got to drive to get there.
I agree with that. Definitely.
They probably hit bank on it in California, or even in Flagstaff, or quite frankly up in the Bend area. I mean, those are, or Denver, Colorado area. All those places can get a ton of day people, where they're just kind of like not really overlanders, but they kind of come in. They're going to spend money. They're going to buy the tickets. They'll buy some products.
Well, that was kind of what I was touching on in the beginning of this conversation. There's a big dividing line between are we strictly in it for the money, or are we in it for the community?
Yeah.
And if you choose the community, that choice is like polar opposite of the one that you choose for money.
It could be.
So that's an issue. And like I did not realize that the numbers had dropped significantly for Expo West because visually it looked packed to me.
Yeah, about
It
the
looked
same. I mean, that's still a lot of people. 29,000, 30. I mean, there's still. It wasn't down a lot, but it's definitely
but
trending down.
I wish I was privy to the information if it's there. But I would venture to say, because this is something that I also saw visually, a lot of people I have been used to seeing for almost 10 years now, I did not see. And
Yeah,
then when I
that's true.
inquired about them, a lot of them, I literally inquired to them and they were like, oh yeah, that was my last one. If they were vendors, they were like, oh, I just can't. I almost told the name of a vendor, pretty big vendor, but I don't think he wants me to mention his name. Anyway, vendors totally not digging the amount of money it costs. They're literally saying I have to lose money to and I never heard that 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah, a lot of
it used to be this is a
necessary leader. Yeah.
They were like, this is a necessary investment. That's what I used to always hear.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, I could make more money. I'm thinking of one person, and I'll tell you offline. They were like, the amount that it costs me to go there, and versus I could just stay where I'm at and send off some stuff during social media saying I'm not going, but I'm giving Overland Expo discounts.
Yeah.
And he's literally making twice the amount of money.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely reached that break over point. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. And with some of the newer events, we talked about this a couple podcasts ago. With maybe next year with the Northwest Overland Rally this summer, you've got the big event, big one at Ex Overland's Ranch in Montana. So we'll see. There's definitely we'll see. I want to hear your full report from Pacific Northwest.
Oh, no doubt. Mike, is there anything else you want to say?
Geez, no, not this week. I better keep my mouth shut. I got to go hide. The Iranian sleeper cells are after me.
Yeah, they're going to be like, shh.
That's right.
All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.